And yeah, this is the face behind the voice that you're hearing. If you're new on this stream, as usual, right? I love to talk about JS. I love to talk about the power of JavaScript, and I love to help everybody to understand JavaScript more. And not just understand JavaScript more, I love to help you to build something with JavaScript, right? Eventually, you can go ahead to build on technology, build on tools, build on different softwares that other persons can use. So, what is loops? Loops. So for showing the code and for showing people what is working, I will be doing that with VS Code, right? I'm going to be using Coca, using Node.js behind the scene, right? And another thing I'm going to be doing is I'm also going to be using the browser as well. I'm also going to be showing you some things on the browser as well. So sometimes we can just go to the dev tool of our browser to show how some things work. So my goal again is to teach javascript.info. Like the goal of this stream right now, I don't know, right? It can change next tomorrow, but right now my goal is to teach javascript.info, right? The part one, the part two, and the part three, everything there. I just want to teach it, and I want to teach it and teach it and teach it and teach it over and over again until everybody knows JavaScript, until everybody can build something with JavaScript. That's all I like. That's all I'm in on. So I'm using this guide as material to help you, right? So that once you are reading JavaScript info and you don't understand, you can always come to this YouTube video, right? It will help you to understand everything that is going on inside of the document. The document can be complex. JavaScript info can be a little bit complex, but just to make things easy for everybody who is trying to, be good in JavaScript, right there. So we've done all of these. I've done all these JavaScript type conversion, basic operators. Um, I'm going to be doing loops. I'm going to be talking about functions. I'm going to be talking about function expressions. I'm going to be talking about arrow functions. And JavaScript specials is just a combination of all the basic stuff that we have in JavaScript. Also, switch statement. I've talked about switch statement before now, so I might touch on it again, but I've talked about it in the last stream. Everything is there on YouTube. Feel free to watch it. Feel free to share it with your friends as much as you like. All right, let's get the ball rolling today. We will talk about loops, and when we talk about loops, right, we have the while loop, right? We have the do while loop, we have the for loop in JavaScript, we have the ability to skip some part in a loop, right, where you have some statements, right, that helps us to skip. So we have like continue, we have what you can break out of a loop, you can skip the next iteration, and you can label, right? There's labeling. Most persons don't know that there's labeling in JavaScript as well, right? And yeah, basically that's the major thing. Eventually, I can touch a little bit about the for in loop. I can touch in about the for off loop, and eventually, if time permits us, we can also do some things around the array.for each or the array.map, or talk about some of these higher other functions that you have in your array that helps us to achieve the concept of looping again. Welcome to the stream, Abosede, right? Thank you for joining. All of you guys that are joining, you are like the best in the world. Thank you for joining. So if you have any question, feel free to use the comment section to ask me any question. So this video is accessible on Twitter, it's accessible on Twitch, and it's accessible on YouTube as well. So what is loops in JavaScript? Right? The idea of loops is that you want to repeat some actions, right? In programming, right, we always want to repeat actions, 10 times, 20 times, 50 times, right? So it is the same thing you call loop is what you call iteration, right? We have iteration or repetition or loops, or it's a common concept in every programming language where engineers always have the need to repeat something. Engineers always have the need to repeat something. So each program in language gives us concepts that you can put in place that can help you to achieve loops. In JavaScript, right, the common loops, there are three major common loops that we have, which is your for loop, right, your while loop, and your do while, right? We then have some higher modifications of them, in that you can loop through a particular object with the for in. You can loop through a particular iterable with the for of. And eventually, when we move to data structures like array, you can also do array.for each. That is another way of looping in JavaScript. However, all of them, the goal is to achieve the same thing. You are repeating some statement, multiple times. So now let's jump into this. If we have console.log and you have hi, right? And you have hello, right? And you have a. Now, for me, if I want to repeat this like 10 times, how can I repeat this 10 times? What is the what is made available for us in JavaScript to repeat this 10 times? Now, as a beginner, right, you might not know, but if you want to repeat this 10 times, the concept in JavaScript or in programming or basically in software engineering in general that gives you the ability to repeat statements multiple times is what we refer to as loop. Does that make sense? That is, in software engineering, all right, the concept, the technical concept that helps us to repeat stuff multiple times is what you refer to as what? As loops. And the major ones again that we have in JavaScript is what you have, what your while loop, right? The while loop has a modification, right? A modified version of the while loop, which we call what? The do while. And we also have what? The for loop, right? Those are the major ways to repeat statements in JavaScript. All right. So I am going to get myself off the screen and we can get to action right there. So what is the syntax of what? Our while loop. I promised to put some things on. I promised to put this code on a gist. I've not decided how to do that yet, so that everybody can have access to all of the so that everybody can have access to all of the code I'm using. So today I'm going to start by what the code I use in today's stream session. I'll put it on a GitHub gist so that we can all have access to it. So here we can talk about what while loop. So now, what is the syntax of while loop? When you want to write a while loop in your VS Code has something we call snippets. So when I type while, you can see the pop-up here, which is called a while statement. And when I click on the while statement, it gives me this pop-up here. And this is generally what you refer to as what? The syntax of what? A while loop. Right. This is what you refer to as what? The syntax of what? A while loop. So what is the syntax here? Now, the keyword while is important. This is a condition, and you have what? Your curly braces that is introducing to you the body of what? The loop. There must be something we call statements inside of this place. There must be statements inside of this place. So what do we mean by condition? Now, for those who were in the last stream that I was on the last episode of the stream and I did, right, we talked about what? The logical and, we talked about the logical or, we talked about the not, we talked about how to compare things. Yes, we talked about the ability to compare things in JavaScript. And that way, when you do a comparison, the comparison must return back to us something we refer to as what? A Boolean what? A Boolean value. So imagine that I'm comparing is 2 greater than what? 5. Is 2 less than 5. Now, the result of this comparison is going to be false. And so when this comparison here, when the condition is false here, it will never run the statement. So let's imagine I declare a variable here, right? I declare a variable and I assign it a value of what? 0. Now I can say that what is I what? Greater than what? Is I greater than what? If I say is I greater than 5, that is 0 greater than 5? No, 0 is not greater than 5, right? 0 is not greater than 5. And so when you have things like this, if you then go ahead, right? If we then go ahead to put some statement inside of what? This set of console.logs that we have here, if you go ahead and put it here, you would notice that our word, the quokka understands what is going on here. The quokka has, well, look at this white dot. It means that what? This code is not reachable, right? This line is not reachable. But when you look at what, if we turn it here and you turn it and twist it, and you can say that what? Is this what less than what? Is this less than this now? So now, yeah, there will be something running, right? Our Coca begins to understand this now. But if we don't want our JavaScript engine to complain, look at this complaint here. The complaint says what? The number of console messages exceed the maximum allowed value, which is what? 1000. So messages recording are stopped. You may increase the limit by adding what? Max code. So now the Quokka tool that we are using to run the code is telling us that, well, I'm supposed to run some console.log for you, but I'm not going to run this, right? Because 0 is less than what? 5. So because 0 is less than 5, it will go ahead and want to attempt to run all these. But we must have a control mechanism to control the value of what? Of that condition. That is, now we can then do something like what? I plus what? I plus equals 1. That is, after what? After every what? After every execution, we are using this statement to control, right? To control the loop. You can see now that we are using this I what plus equals what 1 to control, then our console.logs are being displayed. And if you check it, the console.logs displayed the I how many times? 5 times. Display the hello 5 times and display the A 5 times. And that is the beautiful thing that we have with the while loop. It is very, very interesting and simple to understand, right? You start with what? Some set of statements that you want to repeat multiple number of times. And you are going to be ending, you're going to try to control the way the loop is working, right, with a control statement. And the control statement here is what? I am increasing the high by 1. So the loop goes into this particular place and check what is the first value of I. I is 0. 0 less than 5. That is true. It will go ahead and run all my console.log. Then it gets to the portion where I ask it to increase the value of I by 1. And it goes and increase the value from 0 to 1. It checks the condition again. Is 1 less than 5? Oh, 1 is less than 5. Beautiful. It goes ahead and run the statement again. Again, it does a check, right? It increases the value of I to 2. It checks again. Is 2 less than 5? And it keeps running that until we have what? 5 less than 5. And the moment we have 5 less than 5, what is 5 less than 5? 5 less than 5 is what? False. And that moment, our while loop understands that they want me to stop. And that is the beauty of what? The while loop. So it is very straightforward for you to understand. You start with what? Some form of what? A value, where you can what? Declare the value and have a condition. And you can see that what? The sequence is what? True, 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 false. And when the sequence gets to false, right, it pops out. When the sequence gets to false, it stops the execution of the loop. And again, the most important member of this loop is this control statement. If you don't want to run into what? An endless loop. Now, this is something similar to what we did earlier, which is what? A modifier in place, where you have your plus equals to what? 1. Plus equals to 1 is something we refer to as what? You are modifying what? That is what we are doing here is similar to what? You are doing I is equals to what? I plus 1. And that is what we are doing. So what we are doing here is what? We're just writing the modifier in place version of this right there. And that is so beautiful. Another thing we can do here is to what? We can use the what? The post increment and the what? The pre increment. We can use the post increment or the pre increment. You can use the post increment or you can use what? The pre increment. Which one? Which post increment or the pre-increment right there. If you check the last video, the last stream we did as well, we talked about this, the post increment and the pre-increment. So I hope everybody understand what while loop is all about. Now somebody's asking a question, right? Is this all about while loop? Yeah, this is basically all that while loop does, to be honest with you, right? The while is a keyword followed by your condition, some set of statements that you want to repeat, and a control statement to control what happens to the loop, and you're good to go, and you are good to go, and you're good to go right there. So another thing that you should understand, right, with the while loop is that what you can you can twist and turn this upside down. So this is the while loop, right? I'm going from a smaller value to an higher value. I'm increasing that way. And I can go ahead and do a lower version. So I can say let j, right, equals to 10. And when j is equals to 10, yeah, we can do while, right? While j is less than while j is, no, we want to do while j is greater than 5, right? While j is greater than 5, you want it to go backward. And this is very, very interesting. And so when you want it to go backward, right, let's just put backward here so that you understand that this is the backward. So when we go backward, we also want to control the statement. So you want to do minus minus j right there. That is, as j is dropping down backward, you are decreasing the value of j. So if you check, right, the value of our j right there is going to be going from 9, from 10 to 9 to 8 to 7 to 6 and to 5. And when we get to 5, right, is 5 greater than 5? That is false, and our loop stops executing. And this is the beautiful thing about loop, right? There are some increments that you must look for whenever you're writing a loop. You must always have the condition. The condition must always be true, right? And when the condition is no longer true, you stop the execution of the loop. And this is your both the increment and both the decrement version of your while loop. All right. So that is that about while loop. So what are the things that we can do with while loop? You can use your while loop to count things right there. So we can do, like, if you want to count from 1 to 10, right, you can use your while loop to count, right? Because eventually, even if you're not doing this console.log right here, right, you can always console.log you can always console.log the value of I. And when you console.log the value of I, you can see that I is going from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 right there. And if you want I to start from 1 directly, you can go to Go to 1 right here and do less or equals to 5, less or equals to 5. So it means that the condition where this loop will start working is that until the value of I is 6, right? The value of I must be 6 before this loop stops working right there. Now I can quickly rush through the do while. Does anybody have any question? I'm missing some persons on the stream. I don't know whether they are on the stream. Is Stanley around? Is Stanley on the stream? Is Abdul Qadri on the stream? Who else am I missing? Is Femi on the stream? Those are like my regular persons that usually join me on the stream. If you're on the call, all right, thank you for joining the stream. So is there any question with the while loop? Any question with the while loop? Any question? Should I continue and show you how the do while loop works? So for the do while, right? We recently I think I had an instance to use the do while loop at work recently. And what happens with the do while is that this is a kind of loop that at least will do before it starts looping. So instead, the way you have the loop here, we said it will help us to repeat things. The do while will help you to start repeating those statements. The do while will help you to start repeating those statements, right? At least once. And that is the way it sounds. I'm going to do something. I'm going to do something. What do you want me to do? Oh, I want you to print console.log hello. Okay, you want me to print console.log hello. What is the condition of me printing console.log hello? right? So again, we need some things to control the condition. So you want to do what? A let what? K, right, equals to 1. And you want to do what? You want to do while K, right? While K is what? Less than we want to do less than 10, and we need a control mechanism. So we need K plus 1 right there. So that is the control mechanism to control. So what we are doing here is that I'm going to be doing console.log, right? Hello. I'm going to be displaying hello, right? But this is, I'm going to be increasing the value of K one after the other, one after the other, and I am going to stop when the value of K is exactly greater than 10. So while 1 is still less than 10, the loop is going to be running. What stops this loop is when the value of K is what? Greater than 10. And that is one thing you have to look for in your loop. You're looking for what? The initialization of a value. You're looking for what? Some conditions, some comparisons that gives you a Boolean result. And you're looking for what? Initialization, condition, and increment, right? You must always have your increment right there. So it's the condition that will tell us when to stop the running of our loops. Again, we can do the do while loop in the reversed version. Again, the advantage that the do while loop gives to us is what? It will what? Do the statement at least once right there. So let's say we say the condition is what? Is 2. If we say the condition here is 2, right? Do while we at least run once. If you say the condition is 3, right, you see it 2 times. You say the condition is 4, you see it. You say the condition is 5, right? And that is the beautiful thing that you need to understand with what the do while loop. It will at least run once. It will at least run once. And that is the beautiful thing that the do while loop does for us. Now, if we want to write this in the reverse, right? If you want to write this in the reverse, we can take this. You can take this whole thing here and duplicate this, right? You can duplicate this. So if you duplicate this, we can call this what? You can call this, instead of what? You can call it what? JK, right? That's the name of the variable. JK is 10. And the first thing is what? You want to do some certain test of thing. Do. I need to do some set of statements. And I can take my condition out of what? Out of what? This place. So here, I am going to be doing whatever is in the statement. And after I am doing, I am going to do a while check. And I am going to paste what's the condition. So here, you would see that what? We are doing what? JK. So what we are doing here is that what? You're starting from what? 10, right? And we are trying to what? Go backward, right? Go backward one by one. You're trying to what? Go backward one by one. So what do we have here? We have JK is assigned the value of 10. You want to do some certain set of things, right? And while you're doing this certain set of things, sorry, the condition should be what? JK. Sorry, the condition here should be JK right there. So right here, right, we are what? Going backward with our what? Our what? The do while loop. Again, please note and emphasize the do while loop is beautiful because at least it will run at least once. So the situation where you need a do while is at least if you need to run at least once. If you have a situation where you need to run the loop once, right, your do while is the best option for you to use. Your do while is the best option for you to use. Any question? Any question? I hope you understand both loops that we've talked about. We've talked about the while loop, we've talked about the do while right there. And the last one we want to talk about is what? We have what? The for what? The for loop, which is always the popular one when you're getting started. What is the syntax of the for loop? Again, when you check your VS Code comes inbuilt with what? A syntax for what? A syntax for what? For our what? That you can always use. A syntax that we can always use that helps us a lot. So there's a syntax called what? A snippet called for right there. And when you look at this snippet, the snippet has what? Let index equals to what? 0. It has this check and it has this increment here. Note, the increment does not have the semicolon. The increment right there does not have the semicolon right there. So what you have here in the for loop is what? We refer to this first one as what? The initialization. That is, this is where the variable is being created, right? Like the control variable that you have in your while. This is where it is what? Created. Right there. We have our condition, right? So it's going to do a conditional check. And when we are done with the conditional check, you want to what? Increase with what? Our what? Increment. And this is the most important word. I've said it again. These are the most important things for anybody to understand with your what? Your loop. Your loop must have an element of the initialization. Your loop must have an element of what? Condition. And your loop must have what? Elements of what? Increment. They are critical to the way loops work in any programming language. There must be what? The initialization, that is the creation of the variable. There must be what? A conditional check, right? To check whether you are still within the boundary of the loop. And there must be what? The index, where you can what? The increment, when you can either decide to increase or decrease our loop right there. So right now, right, most times your for loop are used with what? Arrays. They are used with arrays most of the time, or you can use your for loop to print what? Maybe 1 to 10. You can use your for loop to repeat particular thing. Say I want to repeat what? Console.log greetings from what? Kingston. Greetings from what? Kingston. And so here I want to repeat what this. How many times I want to repeat this word? Let's say I want to repeat it 4 times. I can't spell Jamaica though. I'm not sure if this spelling is correct. Look at me. So right here, this is my declared variable. And I want to repeat it what? 4 times. So I can say this is 4 times here. And this is what? Let's say this is 4 times. And I want to repeat, I want to keep incrementing. And I want to just console.log what? I want to console.log my what? My greetings from Kingston, Jamaica. And that is what we have with what? For loops. Again, with our for loops, the element of the for loops are important. The element of the for loops are important. The element of the for loop are what? Are important. The elements of the for loop are important. What are the elements of our for loop? A for loop must always have what? The increment. A for loop must always have what? The condition. And a for loop must always have what? A increment. If you want to say it again, in the way JavaScript.info puts it, the for loop, any loop must have the beginning part where you initialize the variable. Every loop must have the condition part, right? That is the part where it decides, am I running or I'm not running? And it must also have what? The step, right? What is the step? The step means that, well, they said I should increase just 1 time. So that is the step. Sometimes you can increase 2 times. For example, if we want to write a loop, a for loop that prints what? Even numbers. We can write a for loop that print even numbers, right? All you just need to do, or for loop that print odd numbers, right? You want to write your step not just be 1, or you want it to be just 2. So let's look at what we have here. You can see here that what the for loop is a little bit clean compared to the while loop. The for loop is clean. It's always the easiest one for anybody to get going, to get started. I am going to be looping what? Greetings from Jamaica 5 good times. 5 good times. And the reason is because I started from what? You are doing a conditional check of 0, and you are doing what? Less than what? 5. So it's going to run 0 times, 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, and what? It's going to run what? When it gets to the 4, the conditions no longer what pass. So here, if I over on this here, this condition no longer pass anymore. So by the time the condition in itself is what? By the time the condition itself is what? That is, it is what? 5 less than 5. That is false. When they say 5 less than 5, what is 5 less than 5? That is false. And the moment this condition is false, no other loop is going to run, right? It will stop the execution of your loop. It will stop the execution of your loop. Any question from anybody who is listening? Any question from anybody who is just getting to understand how the loop works? Any question? Any question? And I've said that what the line in between the curly brackets is referred to as your statement, or you refer to it as the body of your loop. It is always referred to as the body of our loop. Is always referred to as the body of our loop. Again, the important element of any loop is that it must have the initialization, that is the creation of a variable to control what is going on, right? You must always have a conditional check, right? A condition to check when to stop the loop and when not to stop the loop. And you have the index, right, that is being incremented to help us to determine whether to increase the loop or not to keep running the loop. And that is the beautiful thing about the for loop. Again, for any loop to work in this life, what are the most important things? There must be the increment, there must be the conditions, and there must be the increment. Those three ingredients, they are very important in loops. Those three ingredients are quite very important in loop. Welcome, Samuel. Right? It's good to see you. All right. And again, we can quickly think about this as our loop. We have the ability to break our loop, right, to skip some part of the loop, most especially with this for loop. I don't know if you've seen something like this before. How many persons have seen something like this before in JavaScript? If you see something like this before in JavaScript, here is what you're writing: an infinite loop in JavaScript. That is, no condition, no initialization, and there is no increment. I just want you to keep running forever and ever. And that is what infinite loop. But the JavaScript compiler most of the time does not accept you to write infinite loop, and that's why you have to be very, very careful. You must know what you're doing when you write something like this. So this is another thing. Instead of us declaring inside of the for loop, we can declare I, J, K, L. Let's use L, right? That is first first value. So when you do first value is equals to 0. So now it is possible to mean that you don't need to do the initialization anymore, and you can do first value, right? What is the condition here? We can do less than 3, right? As long as it is less than 3, I need you to increment that particular first value. So where's first value? And you want it to increment first value. This is another interesting form of loop. And this is going to run how many times? It's going to run the infinite loop 3 good times. It's going to run the infinite loop 3 good times. So these are ways, right, for you to skip some part of the loop, right? Because in this place now, we took the initialization out, right? And we just have the condition, and we have the increment right there. Again, another thing that you can do with this loop right here is that you can skip both the initialization and skip the increment. So again, you can skip, right? Skip or skipping parts of of the loop, of the for loop. So if we want to skip here, we can initialize the second value, and you can do something like this, right? While second value is less than 3, and you can always run something like this. It will work perfectly well. And this is almost similar to the way our while looks. That is, you have created a loop where you skipped what? Instead of putting the initialization and the condition inside of what? This what? That parameters right there, you skipped them to put them within the body of your code. You put them what? In between the body of your code right there. And that is what? Skipping some part of what? The for loop. Another interesting thing that we can do with our loop is that you can break out of a loop. You can break out of a loop. And so it is important that what? We can write an infinite loop with while, and you pass what? You pass what? True. So while this is true, right, create an infinite loop. And so this is another example of what? Infinite what? Loop. This is another beautiful example of our infinite what? Loop. This is another example of our what? Infinite what? Loop, or what you refer to as what? Infinite or infinite, or infinite. That is, it does not end. A loop that keeps running. It keeps running. And this is going to run till forever, till your laptop dies. And your infinite loop in JavaScript is a little bit dangerous, right? Because your JavaScript is a single threaded application, right? It's a single threaded what? It runs in a single thread right there. So how to avoid this is that what? You want to break out of the loop. You want to break out of the loop. So while the loop value is what? Let's say while what can we do here? Yeah, we can do something like this and say what? Let what? Third what? Third value is this, and we can still increment our what? Third value plus plus, and our loop is still going to work. But definitely it's still going to be what? An infinite value. But now you want to do something here. If third value, right? If third value is what? If it is equals to something, if third value, right, is equals to what? If third value is equals to 3, right? You want to break the loop. If third value is equals to what? 3, you want to break the loop. If third value is equals to 3, you want to break the loop. So what is going on here? Can anybody understand what is going on here? We modified our what? Our loop in a beautiful way. We're modifying our loop in a beautiful way where we are using the infinite structure of what? While true, right? But again, we want to need a way to stop that loop. And we are using the break statement to stop that loop from what? Going beyond the conditions that we want. And what is the condition that we want? If the third value is equals to what? 3. If the third what? If the third value that we declared is equals to what? 3. And that is what? Our word. Our first word. The ability to break out of an existing loop. What about our ability to continue a loop and move the loop to the next iteration? So let's say you are repeating, you're looping from what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Let's say you are what? You want to loop through something like this, and you want to skip the even numbers. So we want to skip what? Skip what? Even numbers. I'm feeling like sleeping. And that's what happens when you write code and you stay awake all night too much. Now I need to get something to keep my eyes and my brain coordinated together. I usually advise that you don't do this. I usually advise that you don't take too much of caffeinated drinks because of your health. But I feel like I am going to resort to taking some form of caffeinated drinks to keep my eyes on the screen, right? To keep my eyes on the goal. Okay? All right. Don't be like me where you have to take caffeinated drinks too much. Okay? Oh, All right. Yes. Ridwan, good to see you. I should say congratulations to some of my friends that are joining the stream. I had Sharaf earlier on. I had somebody else earlier as well. Somebody said caffeine disrupts your brain. Really? Or I could do like Ridwan. Should I tell you what Ridwan does to stay high? I know that Ridwan listens to Fuji music. I'm also like a fan of Fuji music. Most people will not believe, right? I'm a fan of Fuji music as well. Because I think like I'm from Ibadan though. I'm from Ibadan. When you know like a proper Ibadan boy, like Fuji should be your in your blood, right? I mean, and it's one of the beautiful art that comes out of like places like this Ibadan majorly. Fuji is like raw, and another thing you can do is you can listen to music, right? I think listening to listening to music is another very good thing you can do. So you don't want to listen to music that is going to be slow now when you need energy, right? You want to listen to like very fast songs, right? Afrobeat, right? Where you are shaking your body as you're writing the code. I mean, it's just part of the sacrifices we all pay to stay awake, right? So I like Saido Shukwa, right? I mean, these guys are intelligent. They're intelligent guys, and they use like their Yoruba language to craft different beautiful things, right? Most times you think Fuji is meant for people who are not educated, but you can listen to some amazing things that they are saying, right? It's just that most times we that we are educated, we have left some things for some group of persons, right? And you think like, oh, this kind of music is meant for this group of persons. But I feel like it's high time that you start changing some of these narratives where educated people do like listen to and promote the culture. Because when you look at Fuji on its own, it's a kind of culture on its own where they are trying to reinforce the culture of whether making songs in your traditional language. So, for example, we like Ashake, right? The hip hop guy, right? But Ashake is singing a blend of like African Afro, like Afro beats with Fuji, right? And that comes from somebody like Olamide. Sorry, I'm going into the title of the stream is Loops, but I'm going into songs basically. But when you look at all these contemporary guys that rap in pure Yoruba, right? They are guys that they are just doing what Yoruba, what people like Saido Shupa, Pasuma, right? I think Pasuma has been like a blend of singing hip hop from day one, right? Mixing up with all these guys and and so Bosse is saying that I really envy those that listen to music. Huh? Really? Really? Thank you. I can do that. I can do that, right? We can always cope with doing music. Am I still audible? Yeah, I believe I'm still audible. Yeah. So we can always cope with having music going alongside with working. If that distracts you, I don't know how, but I also do Fuji K1 the ultimate. Okay. So read one, you have fans on the call, you have people like you on the call. All right. Let's get back to JavaScript. So, as I was saying earlier, right, we have a mechanism to break out of our loops, right? And one of the mechanisms that helps us to break out of a loop, what is wrong with my keyboard? Give me a second, please. That's interesting. I'm coming. my okay. I think that all right. I can continue the setup right without my camera. So we were saying something around the fact that with loops you can break out of what the loop. So what does break do? The break statement has a way of what breaking that loop, right? It breaks the loop, right? It what it helps us to what to stop the loop. So the way we used break here is that what here it stops helps us to stop the loop from working. So that here we have this infinite thing here with true. That is, while true is a condition that will always be true. But for us to stop this loop, it will always be an infinite loop, right? But we can create a mechanism here that if the third value here, which we declare to be 0, so as we are looping, we are incrementing. So this helps you to count something, but you want to stop counting at a particular number. And that is what happens with what? The breaking of the loop right here. That is what happened with the breaking of the loop right there. I hope my baby has not destroyed my camera. That is what happens when you have babies around camera. Okay. So I'm going to show you how to skip even numbers. We want to loop through 1 to 5. And when you loop through 1 to 5, when you loop through 1 to 5, how do we skip even numbers here? So we're going to do this with both while loop, do while, and we're going to try this with your what? With your for loop as well. So let's try this with the for loop first. So we want to have a situation where we have what declaration of a value called what? Let's use the fourth value. Fourth value equals to what? 0. And if we want to create a for loop, we can have what? Let each value, right, equals to what? Okay, we already have the declaration of for. What we can do is after that we can do condition, right? We want for value less than what? Less than or what? Or less than let's start from 1. Let's pick it from 1, and then we can do less than or equals to what? 5, right? And we can also do the increment here, which with our what? For value plus plus. So right here, sorry. So we are having a condition here that if for value, right, is what? Modulo 2. What is this? What does this mean? What does this stand for? So when you have a number that is an even number, for example, 2, so 2 is an even number, but when you divide 2 by 2, what happens? What is the remainder? The remainder is always 0. So when you do 2 modulo 2, right, and your result is equals to what? 0. So 0 equals to 0, right, that will become true. So all those times when it is what? Ooh. All right. Hello, we have somebody else in the comment. Should we be afraid or should we run? All right. So when you do the for value modulo 2 equals to 0, yeah, this tracks down our even number. And this is the condition for our even number. So you can always continue here for the even number and continue what happens here, right here. So what the continue is doing here is what? Skip what? The even numbers. And you can see here is console.login or printing the odd numbers. And the same thing with our what? If you have a do while. So I'm just going to comment this out, and then we're going to use the for value again. So if you have a do, so you're going to do some conditions. What is the condition? If what? For value modulo what? 4 value modulo 2 is equals to what? 0. You want to what? You want to continue. And once that happens, you want to console.log for value. And what is the while? The while is what? While condition is what? Our condition must be what? Look at this. I like JavaScript. Sometimes we can write crazy things in JavaScript. What we have on this line 76, can anybody see what we have on line 76? Line 76 is the combination of what? The combination of your what? Your increment and your condition. Line 76 is the combination of your what? Combination of your increment and your what? Your conditional check. So as you can see again there, right? That is line what? Line 76 is what? Line 76 is the what? That this is incrementing already. Back. So this is what? Pre-what? Increment. And when it does the pre-increment, you're also doing the check. Is it less than or equals to? And you're printing what? The odd numbers. And you can also do the reverse of this. So let's do this again with our what? While. So this is very, you can see that JavaScript is what? JavaScript is beautiful. So we can do what? While, right? What is the condition? You can do plus plus what? For what? For value less than, right? Less than or equals to what? 5, right? And you can do what? So if this is true here, right here. Now, this is keeping 1. Anybody knows why it is keeping 1? It is keeping 1. Why is it keeping 1? Because, right, it does not wait for it to run the first time, right? Because of this kind of condition that we are using. So if I bring in this place and I say my fourth value right here, let's say my fourth value plus plus here, it had better be showing my 1, right? It had better be showing our 1, right? Because before, with your while, it first does the conditional check. And when I'm doing the conditional check, I was trying to increment and decrement. So it skips 0 and instantly went to 1. And this is a very good way for you to quickly short circuit things up there. Right there. Have I run into an infinite loop somewhere? My code car has run into an infinite loop. Let's see how did we run into an infinite loop? So while for value is less than or equals to 5, so for value starts from what? Okay, starts from 1, right? And if for value modulo 2 is this, continue this. Why? Anybody can help me to pick that? There's a reason why we have run into a infinite loop somewhere there. I can't seem to pick it though. Plus equals 1. So it starts with 1 less or equals to 5. If we do 1 less or equals to 5, that prints 1 less or equals to 5, 1 less or equals to 5. So right here, we have this here. So you only want to console.log if for value, right? Let's see. If for value is what? If for value modulo 2, for value modulo 2 is equals to 0, you want to continue, right? This is possible. Yeah, this should be possible. So why are you running into an infinite loop? Okay, I think I know why. I know why. I see why now. Let's just do this right there, and we can take this whole thing out, and we should be able to for value modulo 2. Still wouldn't work. Okay, let's debug. Let's go into the browser to debug what is going on. Sometimes, you just play with JavaScript, and I hope that you learn to play with JavaScript enough. Right there. So what is going on? Sorry. Let for value equals to 1. Sorry. Yeah, I think the condition is supposed to be while for value is great. No, well, for one is less than for God's sake. Am I putting this? Am I sure that I'm doing this? Okay. Okay. I just dropped my browser. The block syntax. I just blocked the whole browser. You see what infinite loop is causing my browser? Infinite loop is killing the browser. Plus equals to. Let's do this. So, think I could just do console.log for value, and you want to do something like this. Okay. So this is correct. And we're now saying that if for value, okay, I see what I was missing there. So what I was missing is that when inside the block syntax, like Larry was pointing out, inside the block syntax, I wasn't incrementing. Inside the block, I wasn't incrementing. Inside the if statement. So this was what I had before. And this is wrong. Because if it enters into this line and you are not incrementing, then nothing happens here. The whole loop is blocked here. Because this continue skips the whole execution, doesn't go to this line anymore. It skips and goes to this line. So with your having for value here, right, the computer understands what is going on and the computer prints what you want it to print. So you can now bring this down here, right? Yeah, and you can bring this down there. I mean, sometimes it's just good to carefully debug some of these things here, and you carefully see where the error is here. So you can see that this is when we did this same thing with the do while, we didn't run into this problem. Why? Because we were incrementing outside of this place. I mean, I feel like I can increment outside of this place as well. I mean, I can increment outside of this place as well. I feel so. I feel like this. Yeah, I feel so. I can do this right there. But I feel like, yeah, it's not going to check my one. The problem I have with this approach is it's not going to write one. Right? That's the problem I have with this approach. It's not going to check one, right? Because it will just instantly go and increment. What if I do? Yeah. What if I do this? Yeah, but I mean, it's just nice to get to see all this beautiful approach that you can use to get your initialization working. So the last portion of the loop I want to quickly touch right there is that you can do labels. How many of you know what labeling means in JavaScript? So you can label something. And I'm just going to quickly copy a particular example, and we can so if we have a multiplication table, can we quickly do the multiplication table? And we want to use labels to do this multiplication table. So what you want to do here is you want to do so if you want to do 1 times 1 down to 12, right? You want to write a loop that is going to print, right? It's going to print 1 times what? 1 times 1 up to what? To what? To what? 1 times 10, something like this. So you want to do for loop, right? You want to do the starting value. Let's do start. We're starting from 1, right? And you want to do, so the first one is what? This is going to loop from, let's just say start here, less than or equals to what? Less than equals to 10. And you want to do what? You want to do a start plus plus right there, and you have this here. So what this does is, if you do a console.log start here, and to see, our start is going from what? It's going from 1 to 10. But we're thinking that we want to do 1, that is 1 multiplied by what? Start is equals to what? The result of 1. So what you want to do is you want to print this out. Now let's just do this. String this up, right? String this whole thing up, turn this into a variable, right? With interpolation, right? And turn this whole thing into an amazing what? Backtick and $sign. And we want to console.log this whole thing, right? Console.log this whole thing. And this is a simple what? A simple multiplication table, right? You can see that what is going from what? 1 times 1 down to 1 times 10. Now we can label this. How do you label this? You can say this is the first word. No, you can just do first here, first, or let's say first equals to something like this. Is it no, not equals to colon. So we do what? You do the colon right there with what? Label. So this first is the label. The first is the label, and we can always have access to that label right inside of our code. I'm thinking that, can I do a console.log? Can I do a console.log? Console.log first. Is it possible? First not defined. Okay, so first is not a real value, but the compiler, your JavaScript compiler, knows that first is actually a value. And that's why, for example, now we can do something interesting. You can say that what? If start is equals to what? If start is equals to 5, You can break. So when you check this console.log, what do we have? It stops at what? It stops at what? 5, right? Because we are breaking, right? You're breaking here. And look at this break here. You're breaking at the one that you labeled. And that is what the beautiful thing with your for loop right there. The beautiful thing is what you're breaking with what? You're breaking with what's it called now? You're breaking with the label right there. And your labels are good when you have more than one loop right there. So let's assume that I want to also do another loop that will accommodate what? That will accommodate for what? It will change. Instead of me at coding this one, I need another loop, right? To control that one from what? 1 down to what? To let's say 12. So I want it to end at what? 12 times what? 12 times 1, right? Which is equals to what? 12, and stops at this. So definitely I need to bring another loop into this place, right? Let's just delete this whole thing here because we need another loop, right? So you want to do what? For loop of what? Let what? End, or we can't call it end per se. We want to call it what? The multiplier, or you can call it what? The value change, the next value. The next value, let's call it next value. Next value is equals to what? 1, right? But you want that next value to what? To be the next value stops at what? 12. Next value stops at 12, right? 12. And you want to increment next value, right? And so what happens here is that we want to drag Stanley, good to see you. We want to drag this whole line back into this place. And if we want to drag this whole line back into this place, so what is happening here is that it means that when start is 1, right, it will run another loop, right? So you can see that it's not changing, right? Because I am still at coding this one. So what you want to do is now I can now change this one to what? Next value, right? I can change this to what? Next what? Next value. So it will start from what? It will start from what? 1 times 1, right? 1 times 1. And then when it gets to 12 and it's done, it will switch and it will start from what is it doing for me? You can hear me. Can anybody hear me? Can anybody hear me now? I think I'm back. Yeah, you can let me know if you can hear me in the comment there. Can anybody hear me? Okay. Brilliant. So if you look at what we have now, right? So we have the whole 1 times 1 down to 12 times 1. And then when you get to 12 times 1, it starts again with what? 1 times 2 equals to 2. And it runs it down to what? 3, right? 1 times 3, right? And it runs again to what? It runs down to 1 times 4. I mean, this is simple thing here, right there. So you can always, let's say you want to stop at any condition, right? Let's say if anything happens, you can write a if statement. If um so you can write if next value is equals to this right there, you can stop at this. So again, you can write this to what? You can take this to any level you want to take this to. Trust me, you can take this to any level you want to take this to. So and yeah, you're able to just to just do anything. You can break this, break this. So when you break it, it stops the whole of the execution right there. And um break, break means that this break here is what? This break is stopping this whole loop completely. Because, and this is how powerful the label statements are. If you look at what we have here, we just have like 1 times 1, and it stops at what? 1 times 10, or 10 times 1, and it stops the whole thing. And that's the beautiful thing with break when you are using a labeled statement. So we are inside the second for loop, but we are breaking what? The first for loop. So I don't know whether you understand the power of what I'm showing you. You might not really understand it until you think about it very well. We are inside the what? The second for loop, and you're breaking the first for loop label. And that's the beauty of what? Your label statement. When you label a for loop, most especially when you have multiple labels, we are inside what? The second for loop, and you're breaking the first one. So it's amazing when you can label for loops and you can break it, right? You can break it. I'm not sure whether continue can work. Let me try continue for label as well, because it is super powerful when you really realize what is going on. I think continue works. I think continue works. Yeah, continue works as well. Continue works. Why is internet doing me this bad? The internet is trying to mess me up. The internet is trying to mess me up. So the breaking of labels, like labels, right? Labels allow multi allows continue and break here. The internet is messing me up, and I think I need to I don't know why the internet is messing me up. Mm, ooh. I'm trying to join back from the other computer since the internet is messing me up so badly. Right there. Or I can switch to I can switch to another. Can you guys still hear me? Can you guys hear me? Can anybody hear me? Hmm. Um, okay. I think I'm just going to switch down back to another computer. Hmm. Can you guys hear me? I just switched back to another computer. Not sure whether you can hear me. Hmm. Okay, okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my Mac there. So basically, I just switched from Windows to Mac. I don't know what happened to the internet was messing up earlier. Uh, internet was messing me up earlier, and I think, and this is sometimes like the problem of when you're trying to stream and the internet is saying, no, we're not going to allow you to stream. Yeah. So I was talking about the label thing right there because the label thing is an amazing feature, right? So if you get to understand what is going on with with the labeling thing there, is something amazing that you can really do, right? Something amazing that you can really do. And I think you got it close, Larry, right? So you can control the flow of execution more precisely with your labels, right? Because you can break anyone, whether you have any for loop labeled, you can break anyone. And I think like this will come in handy when you're trying to do all these data structure things, right? If you're trying to do a data structure, um, if you're trying to do a data structure, right? Label would come in very handy in that situation where you can just label a particular loop right there. And yeah, you can always go. So this is exact same code that I have on the other computer that we're working with right there. I was able to copy from the other computer to the first, from the previous computer to this computer, because of my mouse, right? My mouse is a Logitech mouse, and it has the ability to copy between three computers, and that's like some crazy feature. I don't know how that was implemented, but kudos to the engineers behind that kind of feature. I don't know how they got that to work, but it works. And I think so. Right, this is, you can break or you can continue easily just because you label something here, and that is, it's brilliant. It's a brilliant flow because I mean, it's something that you've not seen before, right? I know that if you want to break this first one here, uh I mean, you cannot break it literally without you using label. You can't break out of this first one without you using label, right? But when you label something, you have the power to really break things there. Yeah, Victoria. I mean, I want you guys to also I want you guys to be able to flex like this. I, how many of you saw a job description on Twitter recently? Tailwind Labs is looking for a software engineer, and the salary is around how much? So that's like 270 US dollar, 270,000 US dollar per year, 270,000 US dollar per year. I mean, I'm using MX2S. I want to change to 3S. I want to get like the 3S, and the 3S, both the mouse and the keyboard. But I'm still using the 2S. And I think for me, I just got the 2S and I like it so much. I was just thinking maybe buying the 3S is like a waste of money because the 2S is still functional. Actually, I couldn't find the 3S when I bought the 2S. But now I've seen a place to buy the 3S, and now I don't need the 2S anymore. All right. So my time is really gone. So gone today. Um I'm just going to quickly show you functions. Right. I really like functions. Right. Functions are, I don't know the way I see them, but functions are like one of the most powerful thing that you can ever use in when you're writing programs, right? Because functions help you a lot in a lot of ways. If you have been writing basic JavaScript before without understanding functions, the moment you learn about functions, function is a different flex on its own, right? Function is a big different flex on its own, right? And what is the idea of functions for anybody who is just learning programming? Functions helps you to be able to reuse multiple pieces of code. So earlier when I started the class today, I had console.log what? Console.log what? I have console.log hello, and I had console.log a. Stanley, are you using Logitech as well? Is that what you're using, Stanley? I mean, it's good to see. Devices and gadgets can make life easy sometimes if you're able to purchase them. If you're able to purchase them, and I think the beautiful thing about all these, I think the beautiful thing about all these mouse and all these other things and all these gadgets is that they release new versions easily, right? They release new versions so easily. So, uh, when they release a new version, you have to buy another one. So here we have, how do you write a function? How do you write a function? The way to write a function is you have the function keyword, you have the function name, and you open your parentheses, or what you refer to as your bracket. And this is a valid function. Right. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. Do you install the Logitech app, the Logitech desktop application? Because I mean that's the way you can really get to the functionality of the mouse. If you install the Logitech, if you install the Logitech app, you'll be able to get access to updates and all these other new features right there. So for functions, you have the function name, the function keyword. This is a keyword. The function name. This parenthesis here is for something we refer to as what? Params or parameters. Parameters can be what? More than one. So you can have what? Param 1, comma, param 2, right? Param 3. And so params are going to what? Your parameters are your local what? Parameters is like you are creating what? Creating local what? Creating local variables. Creating local variables. That's what your parameter does. You're creating local variables. So it means that if I have created a param here, param 1, param 2, so this becomes 3 new variables that is attached to this function. 3 new what? 3 new variables that is attached to this new function. So when this function is being executed, right, or when this function is being called, right, you have 3 fresh variables that you can use. And they are only available within these functions. So within the scope, that is this curly brackets here and this place here, that is where those functions are only what available. All right. So again, how do you create functions? The function keyword, the function name, and you have what? Your parameters. You have your parameters. So parameters again is what you so parameters, they look like variables, right? Right there, but they are not what you exactly call your local variables. Because most times people mix up local variable with what? You mix up your local variable with parameters. Local variable is what? Okay, so they are like what? Parameters is like, because let me change this here. It's like what? Like creating local variables. But a local variable, right? Local variable is what? Is when you declare a variable. When you declare a variable. And that variable is only what? The variable is only available within this function. So this message is a local variable. Yes, Victoria, that is right. The parameters, you can call them placeholders because these placeholders here, you're actually using them to collect value from the original function, the original calling of this function. I mean, you will understand what we mean when we say, if we want to, this is what you refer to again as what? A function declaration. Function declaration. And when you want to call this function, how do we call this function? Anybody in the comments, how do we call functions? Call function. You call the functions with the name of the function. So here I am calling this function with the name of that function. This is the name of the function. And this is representing the param 1. This is representing the param 2. And this is representing the param 3. And if you console.log what? If you console.log what? Param 1, you will see the hello. console.log param2. If you console.log param3, you will see them here. So again, your parameters, we use this parameter as placeholder, like what Victoria said, right? To hold something that we can collect from what? These original functions here. So somebody else can decide to change and call this same function another way and say, well, there is function name, and I want to call my function name with what? 1, with 2, and with 3. So you can see that this param1, right? The param1 and the param2, they are just serving as what? A placeholder for you to be able to what? To collect a value right there. So again, and I think that like there are interesting twists and turns that you can do with your what? Your parameters, because eventually we can do like default value, right, with your parameters. That is, you can set a default value with your parameters. That's how powerful parameters are. You can do a default value with your parameters. What else can you do with your what else can you do? You can do a default value, and yeah, you can do a default value. How many of us know what default value means? That is, you can default this value. So let's assume that this last value, you can put a equals to here and set it to be 10. So anytime they don't pass this last value here, that is supposed to represent the parameter what? The value that will be used is what? Is going to be using 10, because you've set the default value of this to be 10. So what do we use to set the default value? This equals to sign, right? Or what you refer to as the assignment sign in JavaScript is what we use to set what? Our default value. And that is what? Very beautiful and very powerful right there. So yeah, basically, what do I want you to understand with functions? The ability to reuse code. The ability to reuse code, and it starts with a function declaration. Abdul Qadri, good to see you. So we have what? The function declaration, and you have the place where you're calling the function, right? The function declaration and the portion where we're calling the functions. And we see our parameters as what? Placeholders, right? Like creating local variables, but it is a placeholder to be passed when calling the function. So this is important, right? The parameters, they look like local variables, but they are not local variables, right? They are placeholders that are only passed when you call the original function. And example of a local variable is what you have on line 25, right? You're creating a variable that is scoped just only to be what? Inside of this function name. So if you don't call function name, this variable will not be created. So you can see that what? If we comment out what? If you comment out the calling of these functions here, if you comment it out here, nothing happens. Nothing happens. It's until we call one of these functions, until we hit the calling of one of these functions, that it creates what? The local variables. Now we also have outer variables whenever you're dealing with a function. That is, you can declare a variable outside of this place. So we can say what? Let for value equals to 4. And if for value is equals to 4, we can now say console.log for value, right? So here your for value is serving as what? For value is serving as what? Serving as what? As an outer what? As an outer what? An outer variable. Outer variable. And this is what? So in relating with functions, what are the things I need you to know? I need you to understand that what? You can declare a function. How do you declare a function? You declare a function using the function what? You can use the snippet in your VS Code, right? If you say function in your VS Code and press tab, it gives you the name and gives you parameter. So you can say the name of your function is add, and you can say that your params is what? You can say your params is just a comma what? A comma what? a comma b. You can say your params is a comma what, a comma b, and you can do a console.log what, a plus b, and this is what, a function. How do you call this function? This is the function declaration. A and b is serving as what, your params, right? This is the body of your function. How do you call the function? You call it with what, the function what, right? The function signature. The signature of the function is the name of that function, and you have 10 plus what, 99, and it calls the function right there. So this is the beautiful thing with functions here. So another interesting thing that you can do in functions is what, you can return values in function, right? Functions have the ability to return values. So what do we mean by what, return values? Return values, it means that a function can what, return, let's say what, you can say let sum or result equals to what, a plus b, and you can return that. So what do you mean by return? Return means that now if we accept this and say what, sum, then it will calculate what, it will call this function and save this result inside what, sum, and then we can now print the value of our sum right there. And that is what your return keyword does. Your return keyword says that, well, this function is done, and this is the result of the action that this function is carrying out. So anytime you see the return keyword, it must always be what, the last action that will be returned in your function. The return keyword must always be the last action in your what, functions. And another thing that you want to note is that what, again, don't forget our default values. Don't forget our default values. Don't forget our default values, right? Right there. So this is just the basic stuff that we can do with what, functions. And another thing that you know we should know with functions is that you want functions to when you're naming a function, name your functions in a way, right, that describes what it does. Function add three numbers, right? So function what? Function greatest between two numbers. So do we still need console.log on line 39? No, we don't need any console.log anymore, right? Because you don't, the reason why I'm still putting it here is just because I decided to put it here, right? Or to just be sure that what you're doing is working. That's the reason why I still have line 39. But if you take line 39 out completely, your code still works perfectly fine. Your code still works perfectly fine. Your code still works perfectly fine. So that is functions. Any other question around functions? Any other questions around functions? Any other questions around functions? So functions helps us to reuse code. That is the beautiful thing with functions. Gives us the magic to reuse, our code. That is what function does for us. Functions gives us the ability to what? To reuse code. Function, they give us the ability to what? To reuse our what? Our code. And that is the major thing. How do you declare a function? You start with the function declaration. When you declare a function, you can declare some parameters that you want to use within a function. You can declare some local variables that you want to use within your function. And you can even use your outer variables, right? And eventually, the amazing thing we can do is that what? You can also return a value, right? You can return a value with the return what keyword. We can create functions within functions. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up, Abdul Qadri. So we say that in this situation where you have what? Can you see this add three numbers, right? This add three numbers. We are able to adjust these add three numbers with what? Function what? You can bring in our function what? Function sum, and you can do this. And so what we want to do is what? You can sum this, right? And you can return something like this. So here I created this sum function, right, inside of the add three numbers function, and it allows me to use what? This sum here. And eventually, you know what else you can do? You can also do what? Let final what? Final sum equals to something like this. And we can return what? What can we return? You can return what? You can return your final what? You can return your final sum. So yeah, you can do beautiful things. And you know, the advanced phase of this is that you can even go ahead and return a function. We can go ahead to what? To return a function. And that is another interesting thing. So instead of you can do the function declaration, right? You can do the function declaration. This is a function declaration of what? The name of the function is return function. But what it is doing is what? It is returning another function. So how do you call this function? So you call what? Return function. So this is the first calling. And this returns another what? This returns what? So this is first fn. It returns the first fn. And after it has returned the first fn, you can also call, right? Call that first fn, right? Right? And it will return, right? The what? It will return the second thing. And you can see that it's until we call it the second time that it is console.login hello. So this is another interesting feature in JavaScript, the ability to what? Return a function. So it means that you can return anything in a function. You can return objects, you can return arrays, you can return a condition, you can return. So you can say something like his name, right? His name. So when they pass name to be maybe Ojo, right? You can say that what? So you can write a function called what is name, right? So something like this. If the name of the person is Ojo, right? Return true. So instead of console.login true, right there, you can say what? Return true, right? And you can return what? You can return false. Does it work like a function expression? You mean when you create, is it when you create a function within a function or when you return a function? Which one do you mean, Abdul Qadri? So what is function expression? Thank you for also bringing that up, because I probably would have forgotten to talk about function expression. So what is function expression? Function expression is when we take a function declaration, right? You take what? Take a function declaration, right? Declaration, and assign it into a variable. So earlier we have the what? We have the had two numbers or had three numbers. So we can copy that same function, copy the function of add three numbers, and turn this into what? Turn this into what? A variable. So you can say what? Let add three numbers expression. Now we can say function expression. And then you can say it's equals to what? Your function declaration. So you make sure you create a new variable and you make it what? Everything is equals to what? The whole of the function. And that is what so this whole thing here is what? Your function expression. And another thing is this add numbers here is not compulsory anymore. So you can always give it one name, and this is what you refer to as what? Your function expression. So it means that we can always move from function declaration to function expression. And you can use them in the same way. You can call this by doing what? Add what? Add three numbers function expression. And yeah, we can say what? X, Y, Z, XYZ equals to this. And you can console.log XYZ. So this is what? Our function expression right there. So function expression is turning a function declaration into a variable, and that becomes your function expression, right? For you to use, becomes a function expression for you to use. And another thing that I would just quickly like to touch on is arrow functions in JavaScript. So what are arrow functions, right? Arrow functions. So you can always move again. You can take your function expression, right? We can take the function expression that we have right here, and we can paste it in here. You can paste it here, remove the function keyword, and you can put what? You can put a arrow there. So you are removing the function keyword and you're replacing it with what? The equals to sign and what? A greater than sign. And you can call this what? Add three numbers arrow function. So what is the big deal with arrow functions? Arrow fn. So the big deal with arrow functions is that what? Arrow functions are like, the idea of them is to write shorter functions, very short ones. So let me write a short version of this arrow function for you. So the short version of this arrow function would have been what? Add three numbers arrow fn. So this is very short. You can see that this is very short and concise. We can even write it without the return keyword, right? So you can delete the return keyword and remove the curly brackets and just what? Have something like this. And this is the beautiful idea of arrow functions. That is one line. Everything happens on one line. So you can call it again. It works the same way every other function works. It works the same way every other function works. Let's just do this. Wrap console.log. That's control L. That's control L not working. So here you can see that this works perfectly well. So you can see that what had 10, 10, and 10. So this is what? This is your arrow function to write very short versions of arrow function. And what makes it arrow function, why the name is called arrow function, is what? You have the equals to and the greater than sign, the equals to and the greater than sign, the equals to and the greater than sign. And that is the idea of what your arrow functions. Any question from anybody? Any question from anybody? So another thing that we have in JavaScript here is we have something we call a callback function. So you can always move from function declaration to function expression to what? To long arrow function, and then you can move to what? To the short what? Arrow function. Or you can move to the what? Explicit, right? We call it what? Explicit arrow function. Arrow function. And the other one is what? Implicit arrow function. Implicit arrow function. Which of the functions would you recommend we should write that fit into most use case? Definitely the function declaration is the one that you should really use most of the times, except you understand what you're doing. But there is no rule that says you cannot use any one of them, right? Other than the fact that when we get into some advanced discussion, you will understand that your arrow functions, they do not understand something we call this in JavaScript. Your arrow functions do not understand something we refer to as what? This, right? So this now is another big thing. When we get to objects and when we get to constructors, I'm going to explain to you what we mean by this. This is spelled this. So this is this, right? This is something very it's a very technical concept in JavaScript, right? It's called this, but your arrow functions do not understand this, or they don't create their own context. So they don't understand the keyword this right there. So it might not, they have some limitations in that regard, but every other one of them do not have any limitation. Whether you're using the function declaration or you're using your function expression, it's only the arrow function that has a limitation, but every other one does not have a limitation. Now, let me just quickly say something around callback functions, right? So, what the callback function means is that we have, when you have a function, so the thing with callback functions is like, this is a callback function. Look at, so this callback function is that before this callback will work, they must call this main function. So, how do we do one example of this? We have a function called say hello, right? And we now have this function here. So you pass this say hello into this callback function. So what happens? It is inside of, is until they call this callback that this call hello will be called. If they don't call this callback function right here, if they don't call this, your say hello will never be called. Do you understand? So that is what a callback function is. A callback function is just a function that allows you to call it when you need it. You only call that function when you need it. You only call the function when you need it. So what you see most times is that inside of this callback function, people can now put a condition. If maybe if a condition is this, right? So look at this now. So if this condition is what is true, you see this error, right? If this condition is not true, right, you're going to see this here. So callback functions are generally like what? A function that calls another function. And this is another very important concept in JavaScript because you're going to be using it all along the days of your life. So I'm going to go deeper into this again when we get into some advanced concept. I think in javascript.info, the javascript.info talks about, when we get to, I think, chapter 6 thereabout, we will now be talking about the advanced usage of callback functions, right? What are callback functions? How can you use them? How can you understand what callback functions are? But what I'm leaving with you is that what the major concept of callback functions is that, see callback functions as just a function that can call another function inside. And so if you don't call the first function, the main function inside will never be called. And that is what you call callback functions. The way I usually describe this is that when the name sounds callback, it means that it is until you call this one, and then when you call this one, that's when it will call this first one here. So if you don't call this one, it is not going to touch this one. And that is what you literally refer to as a callback function, right? There are internal conditions that determine when this particular callback is going to be called. So both of them are functions. This is a function, but this first function is the one that houses this other function, and it is accepting it as a parameter. This is another interesting criteria here. It is accepting it as a parameter. So if it's accepting it as a parameter, if they don't pass it as a parameter, then it's not going to happen. So you need to really, and you use callback functions a lot, right? When we get to JavaScript on the web, right? When you see your add event listener, right? or when you see your you see any other function in JavaScript, basically in Node.js, there are lots of callback functions, right? But as the name sounds, they are called back. You only call them when you need them. You only call them when you accept them as a parameter. You only call them when you accept them as a parameter. You call them when you need them. And that is the major reason why you refer to them as what? Callback functions. Callback functions. And another interesting thing is that with your arrow functions can do crazy things, right? You can do something like this. Const arrow, right, equals to what? First parameter, pass it to another function, pass it to another function, and pass it to another function, and pass it to another function. And then you carry out what? Something. Anybody has seen something like this before? How many times will this function be called? So when you look at this, ARR is going to be called first time, second time, and the third time. And that is another interesting thing that arrow function gives you. Arrow function gives us this ability to what this, because if we're going to write this now, you're going to write what? A function that return another function that return another function. I mean, the example of this would have been function arrow declaration. Now let's arrow declaration. So it would have been something like this: return, and then return another function. So here, right, if we want to call this now, would have called this by saying what? Arrow declaration, and before you are able to call this. So you definitely need to understand that functions are very important, right, to the way JavaScript works. Functions are very important to the way JavaScript works, right there. And the final thing I'm going to talk about today is that so far we've talked about a lot of things, right? We've talked about like variable declaration, we've talked about how you can do some manipulations of the variable using your mathematical operations, using your loops, using your switch, using your functions. And when you combine all of this together, this is what this is the combination that allows you to be able to do something with your code. And that's something that you have to understand, that these basics that we're talking about. Yes, you're right. When you use too much of callbacks, right, it leads to something we call callback hell, right? Callback hell is like you see this dangerous pyramid of having plenty callbacks, plenty returns, multiple times, different times, right there. So that's why sometimes we have better ways of doing multiple callings of functions eventually in your JavaScript. So I hope that um I've been able to like show you some little interesting things in JavaScript that you can go ahead and run with, right? I hope I've shown you. I mean, it's been like 3 good weeks of back and forth learning the basics again. So for me, I keep saying this again, that I don't know anything, but I embrace the basics. I keep doing the basics over and over. I keep doing the basics over and over, and that's the secret. Just that ability to quickly understand the basics, quickly learn it again, learn it again, learn it again, learn it again, until you master it, until you can do it when they wake you up, until you can reproduce all these things without you looking at javascript.info, until you can teach somebody without you looking at javascript.info. And that's the beauty of of a developer that has mastered a concept, right? You're able to master the basics. So my advice to anybody who is on the call today is like, right, just master these basics, go over it, create multiple examples, watch it again, go over it, create, like, just keep going over it until you're able to reproduce it. Go over it until you're able to teach somebody. Go over it until you're able to create your own functions, and ask questions. Ask questions, right? Put comments on the videos, ask questions when you're watching again, and I'm going to just drop into the comment and explain some things to you right there, and you can complete the cycle of your learning. Remember, the cycle of learning is not complete until you're able to reproduce. Remember, the cycle of learning is never complete until you're able to reproduce. So your goal is that as we are learning these basics again, you're able to reproduce. You're able to reproduce this. You're learning these basics, you're able to reproduce this. You're able to what? Go ahead and reproduce this. All right. So what are we doing in the next couple of days? Right. I think the next couple of days, we're going to be checking something around code quality, right? Code quality, right? Under the code quality, we're going to be talking about debugging in the browser, forming your own code styles, using comments, and we're going to talk a little bit about automated testing. We're going to talk about polyfills and transpilers. So I hope that we can meet again next. We can meet again next Friday. What's the date of next Friday? Next Friday should be 31st. Next Friday should be 31st. Is it 31st or 30? I can't remember. Is that at 29th or 30? That's when the next Friday is going to be. And 29th. Okay, 29th. So 29th, I'm going to be taking it advanced again, and we're going to be talking about code quality. So if you want to learn about automated testing, right, you can join me on that stream. That's the stream where I'm going to be introducing the concept of testing. That's the stream where I'm going to introduce you to ideas of what transpilers. What are the examples of transpilers that we have in JavaScript? We have our barbell, right? We have your Vite. No, not Vite. Vite does not fall under that. But I think Barbell, we have something like ES Build. ES Build also falls under that, right? Which other one falls under transpilers? Your TypeScript also fall under that, right? What transpilers means is that they can take your code and reproduce another version, and they allow you to do maybe latest versions of JavaScript. But just come next Saturday. Yes, I'm going to really show you how that works. So, as Kobe said, lead code shows the importance of testing. Yeah, I hope I can also do a video around lead code, because I mean, we can always jump on a particular lead. If you have a lead code challenge that you're struggling with, you can bring that kind of challenge, and we can start a stream one day and just talk about that challenge, and you'll see me solve that problem real life. Because seeing somebody solve the lead code problems is real life, it's like an interesting thing. So you learn how other people solve the problem, and you also get familiar with the way lead code work and other platforms that look like lead code right there. So yeah, thank you for joining today's stream. Right, it's an absolute privilege to be able to do this. I hope you have learned one or two things. Share the video with somebody, share the videos with your friend, tell them to subscribe, tell them to ride along with the party. We talk about JS here, we build stuff with the JS here, and yeah, see you guys on the next stream. Tomorrow is Next.js and Tailwind. I'm super excited, honestly, because like I don't know anything in Next.js, but we're just going to roll like that. We're just going to be figuring it out. Stanley was there alongside with me in the last one where we were just figuring everything out. And it's always good to just figure things out. When you figure something out, nobody can take it away from you. When you figure something out, nobody can take it away from you. And that's the beautiful thing that happens to us as developers right there. Since we figured some things out from the last stream, I have taken it further a little bit again. And it's just amazing. And Next.js is like the main thing now. Next.js and Tailwind, they're like the two most important things now. Maybe with TypeScript, the three things, Next.js, Tailwind, TypeScript, they are the most amazing thing right now happening in the React space. So join me tomorrow. We're going to be building the project that we're building earlier. And then, yeah, bye for now. Thank you for joining the stream, and see you tomorrow.